Is Dan Fiorucci with another spring fast approaching. An effort is underway to head off the dreaded seasonal toll in our state. Dan?
Well, you know, Jason, only Wyoming has a higher suicide rate than Alaska, and those involved in suicide prevention say the two states have two things in common: one, isolation, and two, widespread firearms. Add to that Alaska's winter darkness, and you'll understand why 60 communities across our state banded together tonight to declare war on suicide.
We ask for you to help us to prevent someone from harming themselves in the future.
Suicide prevention is the reason Alaskans gathered in more than 60 communities all across the state this evening.
As of this moment, you are part of the estimated 10,000 people across the state of Alaska participating in this event at 6 p.m. tonight.
These people believe that suicide awareness is an important tool for prevention.
I am a survivor of suicide. I lost my son 15 years ago to suicide.
Diane Jones says that her son's life might have been saved if those around him could only read the signs.
Some of my son's friends had seen signs that they didn't know what to do with, or they didn't take him seriously. They thought he was joking.
My first husband, Thierry Sloan, also a police officer, completed suicide as well.
Law enforcement officers agree. Seeing the signs of an impending suicide and acting on them can help avert disaster.
I'm going to talk briefly about the Anchorage Police Department's crisis intervention team.
Officer Lyon says that if you think a loved one is considering suicide, you can call the Anchorage Police and ask for the crisis intervention team, which she says can help. The evening ended with Alaskan natives performing for those who gathered here. The suicide problem in Alaska is most severe in isolated rural communities. Communities now united against the common enemy, the needless loss of their own people. Now, in 2002, the latest year for which statistics are available, more than 120 Alaskans took their own lives. That's one suicide for every 5,000 people in our state, 4 times the national average. Key signs of an impending suicide: withdrawal from friends and families, especially if that withdrawal is preceded by a life-changing event, such as the end of an intimate relationship. One way to intervene, you can call 1-800-SUICIDE. That number again, 1-800-SUICIDE, easy number to remember, for expert help.
And you know, one thing, Dan, often confusing, especially in this state, is that suicide would peak in our state in the spring just when the daylight is coming back. Why is that?
It seems counterintuitive. What the experts say is that when the world brightens up and you don't feel a part of it, it can actually accent your feeling of isolation, and that is one theory why the suicides may go up in spring.
Well, Dan, I know the governor's office said there's expected to be about 10,000 people participating in this, and we all know it's a very important issue, but not a packed room tonight. Any idea of whether that many people are actually taking part?
Hey, we don't know. You know, I counted fewer than 24. If you amplify that across the state, 60 communities across the state, we come up with only 1,200 people if that ratio holds. So I'm not sure that they got the 10,000 that they talked about.
All right, but certainly more are listening tonight, that's for sure. Thanks, Dan Fiorucci in the newsroom tonight.
Here, particularly hard hit are our rural communities. That's why tonight in 60 locations around the state, Alaskans gathered to raise awareness about this devastating problem. Here in Anchorage, the Alaskans Unite to Save a Life campaign held a special ceremony at the Native Heritage Center as a show of urban solidarity with the struggles of rural suicide.
What we're here for primarily is get the word out to hopefully prevent suicides, because right now we're at epidemic levels of suicide. It's the highest it's ever been. Well, I shouldn't say ever, but in at least the last 10 to 12 years.
The statewide event was sponsored by the Department of Health and Human Services and the Alaska Suicide Prevention Council. Governor Murkowski also proclaimed today Alaskans Unite to Save a Life Day. If you would like more information on suicide prevention, you can call the CARE line at 1-800-SUICIDE.
I'd like to remember those that have lost their lives because of suicide.
Diane Jones is a survivor.
I lost my son 15 years ago to suicide. He was 20 years old.
So is Amy Lyons.
My friend and my first husband, both police officers, died by suicide in Arizona just over 5 years ago.
Pain made worse as survivors dealt with both the stigma of suicide and the shock.
After my first husband died by suicide, things got very bad for me and my daughter.
We understand that there are many reasons why people choose to hurt themselves.
Experts cite a long list of reasons that can lead to suicide, from depression to changes in relationships.
Any kind of impact that it may have on your job or your personal life or your relationships, that can always be fixed. But if you commit suicide, if you complete suicide, that's permanent.
Experts say Alaska has the second highest rate of suicides in the country, prompting an aggressive effort by survivors to save others from that fate.
We ask for your help to prevent this from happening.
Our purpose here today is not to dwell on painful memories. Rather, it is an opportunity to show our support for one another in suicide prevention, raising awareness and showing that lives can be saved.
Changing lives by starting the Alaskans Unite to Save a Life campaign, bringing awareness to the seriousness of this issue across the state.
We have to get the word out there. We need to encourage people to pay attention to the signs and get help for them.
Lyons, now remarried and a new member of the Anchorage Police Department, says the suicide rate among police officers is higher than other professions, likely because of job stress.
Police officers are high-risk group, actually. More officers die by suicide every year than are killed.
Knowing the statistics, hopes her fellow Alaskans will realize that suicide isn't the answer.
Don't do it. There's always another day, and as bad as it gets.
That's what I say.
Yeah, really.
Move on, okay?
Thanks a lot. And before we move on to sports, quick little correction. Last week, Carmen Nelson was labeled as a survivor of suicide, but she's actually the community-based suicide prevention program person. So glad we clear that one up real quick. And what's going on in sports?